started discussing the actual remains, what was found whenever the search parties went out looking for this party of, mind you, experienced survivalists. These weren't amateurs. These were well experienced survivalists, and they were actually out there on their expedition so that they could earn their Class 3 certification as I believe they call it tourists, but it's basically their Class 3 for being a survivalist. And in the Soviet Union at that time, that was the highest level of certification that you could get there. So these were very well trained survivalists who knew their ways around. Now we went through some of the injuries and everything that these people were found to have had. I can go over some of the locations where they were found. The first group that was found within 1.5 kilometers away from the tent. Now, when they found the tent, and it was all, it looked as if somebody had cut the tent up from the inside. And what had happened was these survivalists had literally left the tent and split up into different directions, half clothed, with clothes missing, in the middle of Siberia, which, if you know anything about Siberia, you know that that's a bad thing. And this is during the winter time too, when snow was on the ground and everything. Well, the first group that was found 1.5 kilometers away. All right, and they wore minimal clothing, and they were found either barefooted or wearing only socks. Autopsies revealed hypothermia as the cause of death for these individuals. Now, after that, 2 months later, the remaining hikers were discovered in a ravine that was approximately 75 miles away from the others. Now, I was told a different story. I was told that the first group was only 2 of them, and they were found like 1.5 kilometers away, and then there's another group that was found of 2 that was found just a little bit farther off. But I'm not for sure how that actually what played out. So I want to do more research into that. But I was told that 2 groups were actually found before the third group was found 75 meters away. Now these were the ones that was kind of strange. And me and Mark, when he was here, we had this conversation about the condition that these bodies were found in. Now, according to what they said, that there were 2 of the people who were in this thing who suffered from broken ribs. Now, the terrain that's in that area where they were camped at didn't have any cliffs that were high enough that would be capable of causing that much damage to rib cages whenever from a fall or anything. And you wouldn't be able to crush your entire rib cage in from falling over. You know what I mean? That just wouldn't happen. So that was one of the issues that was brought up, and Mark brought up he brought it up that it could have been the weight of the snow. Now that's I don't know for sure if the weight of the snow could do that within a matter of 2 months. It's a good theory, you know. But then the other thing that came up that was pretty strange was there was one of the members of the expedition. Her name was Dubinina, and she had missing. Her eyes were missing and her tongue was missing. Now, when they found her, her face was down into running water, like a little ravine, and they said that the water could have caused the eyes to dissolve. But then it went even further and said that with the tongue, though, it wouldn't have happened with the tongue. There was no way that water could have been responsible for her tongue dissolving. That's when Mark brought up the fact that it could have frozen and broken into pieces, which that would make sense too. But then you have to take into consideration that there would still be fragments of her tongue still somewhere in her mouth, and that led both again to another topic that maybe it could have been a fouled up investigation. That they went out there, they didn't do a proper investigation, and they didn't find all the evidence that they needed to find, which I can see that as being true too, because it's like back when I was younger, I remember finding out about Citizen X, one of the worst serial killers in history, and it took them until the fall of the Soviet Union before that murder those murder cases could be solved, and it was just decades and decades where it went unsolved, and the way they did the investigation was horrible. So with that being taken into consideration, I could understand that as being a fouled up investigation. After that's when we decided to give it a break and come back and do the rest of part 2 of Dyatlov Pass. The Dyatlov Pass incident is what I called it. Now, with this one, what I wanted to get into was the fact that there were several anomalies at the site that added to the enigma. Now, there was traces of radiation that were found on some of the hikers' clothing. Now, witnesses at the hikers' funerals reported that the victim's skin had an unusual orange hue to it, and their hair appeared grayish. That's just witnesses that that gave their testimony basically of what they'd seen. That's probably not, solid evidence, but that is something that I did want to mention. Now, some of the bodies showed burns, they showed cuts and bruises, and these were cuts and bruises that were inconsistent with injuries typically caused by like an avalanche or exposure to the cold. These were deep cuts, deep wounds. Now, if I do understand you're out in the woods, you're out in the wild, it's cold, you're falling around, you'll get cuts and bruises. But if you take a look at the photos and all of the evidence that they showed that showed the actual injuries, these were serious injuries that you just wouldn't get if you fell over or you bumped into something or you hit the ground, you know what I mean? These were like the knuckles. The knuckles themselves was where you could tell it looked like these people had been punching something, and when they punched it, they were all the way to the bone. You know what I mean? And also, there's something else that I wanted to mention too that I didn't mention the last time. When they found these bodies, there was no signs of animals chewing on them or anything like that. These were not wounds that were inflicted on them after death. You could, and that was point blank stated in the investigation as well as afterwards. Like, animals didn't come up on them and start eating on their bodies or anything like that. These were actual cuts and abrasions that happened to them while they were alive. So that's something that I forgot to mention in the last one. But I am mentioning it now. So I am keeping an eye on the chats and everything, so if anybody has any comments they wish to make, I am able to see them, and I will be able to have a conversation with you in chat if you wish to have a conversation in chat. So with that being said, let me go ahead and continue with what I was saying. Now, this is where we ended up getting into getting to the end of the last one. Now, one of the most widely accepted theories is that an avalanche forced the hikers to flee the tent in the middle of the night. Okay, so this is something that I heard a lot of people discussing this say, and I agree with them. Okay, so what it is basically they come up with this avalanche idea, saying that these experienced hikers who know how to deal with being out in the wild, especially in Siberia, who are trained. Like I said, they're very well trained. Here's an avalanche, and they decide that they're going to get up and run out of the tent after cutting holes into the side of it, by the way. But they're going to run out of the tent in separate directions with clothing missing. Okay, it just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't fit what's being said there. So these experienced hikers decided that they're just going to get up and run in fear out of this tent in separate directions instead of trying to regroup because they hear an avalanche. It just doesn't fit. And I mentioned it before too, that if you go in and you look at some of the old photos and all of the videos, you'll see that they had these skiing sticks, where where you ski with the sticks and stuff. What they did is they stuck these sticks down as perimeters around the tent before all the incident happened. Now, it was brought up too that if an avalanche did come through, those sticks wouldn't have still been standing. They'd have been knocked over. And clearly after the incident, when the search parties found the tent in the condition it was in, those sticks were still sticking up out of the snow. So in my opinion, that doesn't fit the profile. I mean, those sticks would clearly not have been still sticking up out of the snow when the search parties came to find them, and you can clearly see them there in the photos sticking up out of the snow. So that's my take on that. Now, the injuries such as the broken ribs, they could be explained by the pressure of the heavy snow, is what they're saying. But I'm still kind of iffy about it. Okay. Now, critics have also pointed out that the lack of significant snow buildup on the tents and the absence of external injuries inconsistent with avalanche weakens this explanation. You know what I mean? So basically, like, the injuries that they would have been able to, or that they would have sustained because of an avalanche, they weren't there. You know what I mean? There was no evidence from the actual damage or the injuries on the bodies to show that an avalanche would have been the cause. Now, the injuries that were on these people were very extensive, but they apparently